those who are with us in Zoom, may I request you to kindly turn off your microphone and also your camera, kindly turn your videos off so that we won't be having a disruption in our webinar session tonight. Thank you so much. Here in our webinar session. And again, just a little reminder, kindly turn off or put your microphones on mute and turn off your cameras so that we won't be having any disruption during our webinar session tonight. Thank you. our webinar session. And make sure you have your notebooks and your notebook and pen with you so that you can write your notes on, because for sure you will learn a lot about research from tonight's session. Okay? Any minute from now, we are going to start. And experimental research designs and threats to validity. But before we start, let us have first our opening prayer. So let us put ourselves in the holy presence of the Lord as we say, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Almighty and ever-loving God, we glorify and thank Thee, Your name. You have showered us with so much blessing, and your presence continuously remind us of your faithfulness and guidance. With this, may we humbly ask you to shower our speakers today of your greatest inspiration so that they may share the most of their knowledge, heart, and soul to their respective topics. We pray that you would deepen our comprehension, broaden our thinking, and transform our understanding. May we also observe the invaluable knowledge and put into practice what we may learn today. Take what we have prepared and multiply our efforts as only you can. Clear our intentions to align with your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail us or fall short. May all glory up to you when we reach the finish line and climb over benchmarks. Keep love at the forefront of our minds today and the guiding light for all we set out to accomplish and celebrate. For you and you alone are our wise counselor, our perfect teacher, and our faithful friend. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So once again, good evening to all our viewers. I am Ms. Edany Pange, a faculty member of the University of San Jose Recoletos College of Education, and I will be your host for tonight. So just to check if you can hear me, okay, so to all our viewers in our FB Live, can you please hit the like or the heart button to indicate that you can hear me loud and clear from there? Okay, thank you so much. And what about our Zoom participants? Can you please use the applause or the thumbs up button for me to know that you can hear me clearly right now? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I can see the applause and the thumbs up. Okay, thank you so much. So by the way, the College of Education of the University of San Jose Recoletos is very grateful and thankful for the support that you have given us in this webinar series. And actually right now, we have around 9,000 followers in our COE hallway page, the official Facebook page of USJ-R College of Education. And we thank you so much for your utmost support. Okay, so it seems that we are all set for tonight. And so to officially start our webinar session, let us welcome the chairman of the Physical Education Department, Ms. Jennifer Ragnas, for the opening remarks. Hello, Ma'am
Ms.
Jen.
Eda. Thank you. Good evening to each and everyone, and welcome to our last Learn at Home webinar series for the month of June, which is Presentation, Tips, Do's and Don'ts, and Experimental Research Designs and Threats to Validity. With the threat now of the pandemic, we are trying to look for ways and means in order for us to become productive and for us to still be updated, not to be stagnant with our knowledge and capabilities as a person. It is but fitting tonight to listen to our competent research experts on research presentation and process design. As we all know, research is an ongoing activity that even in this time of COVID-19, the value of research and fact-finding has been more important than ever. In the academe, research has found its place as 3 to 4 subjects in the senior high school program and making it as one of the teacher's deliverables in a year as an extended program by the Department of Education. And I know that these speakers can shed light to any of our so sit back.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Jen. And so now, to give us the rationale of tonight's session, may I call on Mr. Wendell Casquejo, a PE faculty of USJ-R. Good evening, Sir Wendell. Thank you so much, Sir Wendell. So before we start, I would just like to reiterate the following house rules so that we can have a smooth flow and undisrupted webinar session tonight. Okay, so here are our house rules. First, I would just like to remind our Zoom participants to keep your microphone on mute at all times, unless you are asked to unmute it, okay? And also, it is recommended that you also keep your webcams off so that we will have a lighter traffic in our webinar. And if you have questions, it will only be entertained during the open forum, which will be done after all the talks. And if you have questions, just leave a comment in our USJ-R COE Hallway Live video, or you may chat your questions if you are using Zoom. So, but that will be during our open forum later. Thank you. Okay. So, and also, by the way, you have to make sure that you will stay with us until the end of this webinar, because I will be announcing some important information regarding as to how are you going to receive your certificate of completion. Because as you know, this is our last session for our first episode of the webinar series. And next week, we will start already with our second episode. Okay? So I don't want to keep you waiting because I know that you are all excited to listen to two of the most sought after speakers in the field of research. Okay? So without further ado, I will now introduce to you our first speaker. Okay, our first speaker for tonight is a graduate of Bachelor of Science major in Statistics and also earned his master's degree in statistics in Mindanao State University. He has worked as a project leader and statistician in various researches conducted by Philippine government agencies, such as the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, the Department of Trade and Industries, DTI, Department of Agrarian Reform, DAR, and also Department of Health. And presently, he is working in Philippine Science National High School in Sub-Sarjan region. Friends, let us all welcome Mr. Jonathan Madronero. Good evening, Sir Jonathan. Your microphone is on mute, sir.
Okay, so good
Good
evening.
evening. Good evening, sir.
Okay, so my presentation for today is all about the do's and don'ts of data on your data. So methods in presenting and displaying data and making appropriate graphs and tables. Okay, so to start with, so una sa lahat, why are we making this one? Because kailangan ng ating mga readers kung anong meron sa data natin. What the numbers mean, clearly and consistently. We should think carefully about choosing appropriate visualizations because nowadays, dapat kasi appropriate para ma-convey mo properly ano yung meron sa data mo. I observed recently sa ating mga Facebook accounts, may mga graphs regarding COVID data. It's very alarming ang mga graphs, ang mga tables. So I hope with this presentation na i-share ko sa inyo, makikita natin ano pala dapat para ma-convey properly yung mga ating gusto i-convey from the numbers na meron tayo or the data. Table and graph design underpin and support these roles. So ibig sabihin, yung table and graphs mo could stand alone. Hindi na kailangan ng marami pang words or anything. Dapat a picture alone paints 1,000 of words na daw. Okay, so why tables are important? Good tables are an integral part of your package. Kumbaga, if magagawa ka ng report or research or any news release, a good table will convey a very nice message. So, sa table pa lang at sa graph, dapat you present it properly. Also, if you use a table effectively, minimize the number of data values in your text. So, gaya sinabi nila, less talk, less mistake din. So, ganun din sa pag-present mo ng information. So, kung graph and table lang, nandiyan na lahat ng information. It also eliminates the needs to discuss less significant variables that are not essential to the storyline. So, kung COVID-19, huwag mo nang dagdagan about other information hindi na related sa COVID-19. Also, according to Miller in 2004, if you design a good tables, dapat yung audience mo ang una mo i-consider. So kung audience mo is children, so make your tables na ma-appreciate din nila sa ganyang level. Design both the layout and the labeling. Okay? Because the attention of those readers nasa layout and labeling. Kung hindi kasi masyadong maganda, hindi catchy for them. Okay? And also, there are two types of table. First is the reference table. Ito yung mga large number of entries. Before, when I work in PSA, kadaming books na puro reference table. Those are large number of entries, which is very necessary to make a report. Also, these reference tables usually supplied away from the main commentary in an appendix or an accompanying spreadsheet. So yan yung mga ginagamit natin. Because of this volume of information, very important to design the table allows the user to identify ano ang appropriate statistics for that type of data. Para minimum effort lang kanyang dadalhin or gagawin. Okay. However, another type of table is for presentation or demonstration. So ito yung i-highlight ko para makita natin kung ano yung mga kailangan i-highlight ng mga values and figures. Okay? So, dito din sa presentation and demonstration table should be presented in a concise, well-organized way to support the accompanying analysis. So, I hope nababasa nyo rin yung sinasabi ko at binabasa ko because lahat na kasi dito nasa slide ko na rin. Okay. Dito sa presentation demonstration table, katulad ng iba, very large man yung una, reference. Dito sa presentation demonstration table, small lang siya but well-formatted. Ibig sabihin din dito, madali lang i-convey a message because small lang at ano lang yung gusto mo ipakita sa data mo. Okay? Now, ano dapat ang i-remember? Tables should be able to stand alone. When you say stand alone, hindi na kailangan pang maraming explanation. The table alone, ma-explain na. Diba? Noon, sinasabi nila, ang basic right daw natin is the right to read and the right to read and write down. So ngayon, hindi na kailangan read and write lang yung basic. Dapat we learn to interpret data na rin for our own consumption, di ba? Kung alam natin yung graph na pababa, pataas, kung nalaman natin ano ba ito, is this good or not, di ba? Table should be able to stand alone. Ibig sabihin, the table alone pa lang, dapat meron ka nang ma-convey na message para sa mga viewers and readers mo. Okay. So here are the parts of the good table, yung mga checklist natin. 5 lang po siya. Una is the table title. Dapat clear, accurate. Also, 3 ang dapat we consider for a table title. What, where, and when. So, ibig sabihin, if a good table title, dapat masagot niya ang 3 what, ang what, when, and where. Okay? Short and concise, hindi necessary na very lengthy. The title lang kasi siya. And ito, avoid using verbs. Okay? And also, here's an example. Plan age of retirement by occupation, Philippines 2007. So, dapat clear siya and accurate, I think, correct? And ang answers what, where, and when. So, your what here, very clear. Your where is the Philippines, and your when is the year. And short and concise siya. So why gives all why? Because it gives all the information needed to understand and use the data correctly. So yan lang, makikita mo na agad kung ano ang kailangan mo for a table title. Okay, next is the column header at the top of the table. Header, so ibig sabihin nasa top. Identify the data presented and provide any relevant metadata. So dito mo ilalagay yung unit of measurement. I saw some tables, like for example, kilogram. Each variable nilalagyan ng kilogram, kilogram, kilogram. So hindi na kailangan. Ilagay mo lang siya sa column header indicating yung data na pinapakita mo are all kilograms. So wag mo i-mix kilograms, tapos may inches pa, tapos may gallons pa. So kung kilogram, kilogram lahat yung data natin. Okay? And you also have the rows tab. Dapat nasa first column of the table. So yung rows tab from the word itself na nasa row, so una siya at most sa first column of the table. And identify the data presented in each row of the table. Okay. isa din sa pinaka-importante part of the table is the footnotes. Because sometimes, when you present data, hindi kasi siya complete. Sometimes, meron kang mamimiss. So, maglalagay ka ng footnotes to indicate ano bang meron sa mga data. Bakit may missing? Anong meron? Bakit ito lang siya ang information na gina-convey? So, you put it on the footnotes. Okay? So, usually, nilalagay ito sa bottom of the table. And you provide any additional information. And lastly, ang importante is the source. Siyempre, hindi pwede fake news dito. Dapat ilagay natin kung ano ang, saan galing ang ating source, okay, at the bottom of the table. So, provide the source. So, kung galing ito sa Philippine Statistics Authority, ilagay mo. Kung galing sa DNR, DOH, you acknowledge DOH, okay? Huwag natin angkinin, okay? That's a very bad for research ethics, okay? Now, this is an illustration of a good table. So you have a table title sa top, then the column headers on the top of the table, then the rows tabs, yung first column natin. And the data, yung i-convey mo na information, and you have here also the footnotes and the source sa pinakaibaba. Okay, so let me show you an example of a graph, of a table rather. So again, when you say a guidelines, dapat avoid unnecessary text. Dapat direct to the point. And display your data either by chronological order. For example, for longer time series, you use the reverse chronological order, starting with the most recent period, yung pinaka-latest, okay? And going backwards in some cases. And also, use a minimum decimal places. So kung gagamit ka ng 2 decimal places for one data, dapat 2 decimal places yan lahat. Hindi yung isa-isa lang, yung iba, 10 decimal places. So dapat uniform for all. Okay? There's no standard rule for how many decimal places. Pero in practice, I only allow 1 decimal point. Okay na siya to present a table. Pero however, doon sa physics and chemistry, like yung mga moles per grams or yung mga measurement na very small ang mga measure, I allow 3 decimal places for that. They're very important. Tapos yung iba, ang ginagamit nila scientific notation. Kung mga scientific notation ka, scientific notation for all. Okay? Pero kung gagamit yung 3 decimal places, 3 decimal places for all. Okay. So, you also use thousand separators. Ito yung mostly nawawala sa mga tables natin. Okay? Bakit? Parang hindi kasi binibigyan pansin ang thousand separators. Maganda kasi ito, especially if you're very large number. For example, sabihin mo 13 million. Sa iba, makikita nila ay 1.3 million lang pala ito. Pero actually, kailangan i-emphasize natin yung thousand separators. And align the numbers, wag i-center, and do not leave any data cell empty. Okay? Kung meron kang mga spaces na empty, lagyan na lang natin ng NA. Tapos sa NA, i-explain mo bakit NA. That is the purpose of the footnotes. Okay ba? Sige, let's proceed. Okay. This is an example of a bad table. Bakit bad? Sige daw, kindly observe yung mga sinabi ko earlier. So, una, let's start with the title. So, what can you observe sa title? Meron ba ang what, when, and where dyan? Na-address ba? Nakikita ba? And also, if you observe, may vacant ibabaw ng transport. So, ano ibig sabihin dito? And also, merong NA. Like, for example, look at agriculture, NA. Bakit NA? So, ano ibig sabihin dyan? And look at the dates also. 1980, 85, 90, 95, 2000, 2002. So, is it okay na hindi equal ang interval ng mga dates natin? Or because yan lang kasi yung i-provide? So, ano yung mga what makes this table bad? Okay, let's start. Number 1, geographic area, which is the where, hindi siya known. Hindi siya gisabik. Number 2, wala ang data source. Saan to kinuha ang data? Galing ba to sa website lang? Saan ba to, di ba? Hindi siya nasagot. So dapat when you make a table, dapat emphasize the source. That is very important. Another, values are centered rather than right aligned. Very obvious. And also, values should not be displayed with two decimal places, too much information. However, if you observe, two decimal places. But look at agriculture in 1995. Merong one decimal place lang, right? So if you want to make it uniform lahat, two decimal places lahat. And look at the total also. The total, walang decimal places. So ano bang dapat mangyayari or gawin natin para maging organized, and this is a good example of a table. Okay, ano pa nakikita natin na wrong dito? The total value should have the same number of decimal places. So what I said earlier, kung ilang decimal places, dapat same for all. Okay, and also, yung NA is not explained. Ano ba to? Not available? Not, ano ba to? Ano ba tong NA dito? Okay, dapat ma-explain yan sa footnotes. And also, what's the purpose of the gray shading and the lines? Bakit? Bakit kailangan natin kulayan yung residential, yung agriculture? For the purpose of art? Ay gusto kasi colorful para mas maganda ang presentation. There's no need for a colorful table. Do not put pink because your favorite color is pink. Ay gusto ko pink. No. Wag nang lagyan because baka may ibang ibig sabihin yan sa iba. For example, kung maglagay ka ng red, baka isipin ng iba, ay baka bloody information to. So if you like to present your data, present as it is. So no more other colors pa kumbaga. Okay? Sige. And lastly, table is unnecessarily spread. Ibig sabihin, very spacious. Talaga i-spread out niya entire space niya sa kanyang screen, no? From left to right talaga. So, hindi kailangan maging spread across siya. Okay. So, this is now the new table. The good example of a table. Bakit siya good example? So, ibalik natin. This is the data. Tapos, i-improve natin to para maging good table na siya. Again, observe the table, no? Ito. Hindi kailangan yung maraming lines. Hindi masyado kailangan yung color. So, if we want to improve, we will show our table like this one. Okay. So, what can you say now? Diba? Mas, mas healthy siya. Hindi naman healthy. Mas clean, presentable, and parang healthy siya sa mata titignan. So, let's start with bakit naging good table ito. So, paano ito naging improve? First, all the information needed to understand the data is provided in the title. So, very clear, di ba? So, table 1, what? What is the what here? So, share of total energy consumption in percent by sector. Then, where? Saan to na data? Philippines. When? Kailan to na data? From 1980 to 2003. So, tignan natin. So, you have 1980, 85, 1990. Okay, I'm so sorry for this. This should be 1995, then 2000, 2002, then 2003. So, regardless of the gaps of the year, hindi naman siya mag-matter if their data is yan lang yung available. Okay? Importante, you present it properly. And we also have here the data source is identified. So, saan ba siya identified? Saan siya ang source natin? We have here from Philippine Statistics Authority. So, we are now confident to claim that the data is reliable because we have our source. Make it sure nga kinuha mo talaga yan sa PSA, hindi gawa-gawa mo lang. Okay, marami naman kasi gumagawa ng mga data, wag naman ganyan. And also, all values are right aligned, especially kung may decimal ka, wag yung sa center. So right align lahat, di ba? Very clean. Tapos very organized pag ganyan ang pag-present mo ng data. Okay? What else? Ano pa ang iba dito kikita natin? Paano natin na-improve ito? The abbreviation NA is explained in the footnote. So observe in agriculture in 1980 and 1985. Gilagay natin dito NA. So, ibig sabihin, not available siya during that time in 1980 and 1985. Bakit? So, naglagay tayo ng footnote. We indicate here, for example, superscript 1 to indicate 1 here, ibig sabihin, data on energy consumption for the agricultural sector was not collected until 1990. So, ibig sabihin, walang information. So, huwag mong lagyan ng 0. Dahil kung lagyan mo ng 0, baka ma-misinterpret din ng iba. Baka sasabihin ng iba nga, wala tayong agricultural information on 1980-1985, wala tayong agriculture, so do not put 0. Instead, you put, maglagay lang ng NE or any symbols you like, then you put a footnote for that para ma-emphasize mo and ma-explain mo further bakit walang information about that. Okay? And another one, only the lines that separate the different components. So yung bad example of table ka na, di ba? May color, may gray lines, tapos ang dami pang lines. May horizontal, vertical lines, tapos magulo. Tapos, if you will think of saving ink in printing, syempre, very costly yon dahil ang daming lines and ang daming vertical lines, horizontal lines. But if you will make 3 lines to emphasize lang yung header, yung data, footnote, and source, lagyan mo lang ng siya separators to emphasize. Huwag nang lagyan lahat ng lines. Okay? Also, in publication, I also observe some of the editors prefer tables na ganyan. Yung simple, tapos walang masyadong marami because isa din kasi yan sa gina-consider sa mga publication yung less ang cost sa printing because kung marami masyadong colors, marami masyadong lines, it will cost them a lot din. So make your data values when you present it simple. Okay, ganyan lang. That will apply for all, even the statistical results or values, yung mga p-value mo or yung mga result mo sa ANOVA, you present it like this. Yung 3 lines lang, organized, 1 decimal places, and others. Okay, huwag masyadong lagyan ng marami pang hindi kailangan for the graph. Okay, for the table rather, sorry. Okay, next. The table is not wider. So earlier, grabe yung spread niya from left to right talaga. So this time, you only have to maximize the space. So kung ano lang, minimize the space, hindi maximize. Minimize the space lang. Kung ito lang yung kailangan for the data, ang yung ipapakita mo. So, yan lang yung makikita mo dito. Okay, what happened here? Okay. And why, after you use this table you present, ito yung makikita natin to show na this is a good example of the table wherein dapat ipa-follow natin to make our data more presentable and ma-understood ng karamihan. Okay, now, this is for the table. This time, let us have graphs. So, according to many, Miller in 2004 also said, statistics can often be better understood when they are presented in a graph. So, there are some information na hindi talaga makikarry ng tables lang. Dahil sometimes, yung tables, hindi mo makikita yung gusto mo i-convey. So, with the help of graphs are also data presentation. There are 2 ways to present data, tables or graphs. So, alam naman natin when you say graphs like pictures, picture paints thousands of words. So, the picture alone can stand alone na rin siya and you can explain na based picture lang. Okay, a graph is a visual representation and a very effective visual tool. Especially nowadays, in large data natin na yun, or the big data for this big data revolution, we have data visualization. The better data visualization, the better yung grasp din ng mga information. So, pagandahan lang natin yung ating graphs. However, appropriate graphs ang gagamitin. Huwag yung graph na, I feel ko mag-box ako, ay gusto ko, ito yung gamitin ko. No, dapat may basic graphs na gagamitin for that. Okay? It is a very effective visual tool as it displays data quickly and easily. And you can facilitate comparison and reveal trends. Okay. So here are the checklists for a good chart. So meron tayong checklist for a good table. Meron din tayong checklist for a good graph. So grabs the reader's attention, presents the information simply, clearly, and accurately. And do not mislead, okay? Or, yeah, wag mong ibahin ang landas ng information. So kung yan talaga yung data natin for COVID reveal. Speaking of COVID, I would like to share, like ngayon daw, umabot daw tayo ng 32,000 plus. That is for positive cases. But among the 32,000 positive cases or 32,000 plus, 10,000 of those, if I'm not mistaken, kung hindi ako updated, baka 11,000 na ngayon or less than 10,000 out of the 32,000. So 32 minus 10,000, yung 10,000 is yung naka-recover, right? So ibig sabihin, 32 minus 10, 22 lang talaga. Hindi 32 pa rin. Dahil naka-recover na sila. Diba? Pero when DOH presented the information, 32, kadami pa rin. Pero dapat i-consider din nila na hindi lang yung 32 na lahat because may na-recover na. So dapat i-consider mo, puro kasi siya add. Wala siyang gina-subtract, always adding. Tapos meron pang number of deaths na 1,000. So 32 minus 10 na naka-recover, that's 22. Minus 1,000 deaths, so that's 21. Although alarming pa rin, pero sana ganyan yung ipinapakita. The number of positive, yung positive number of recoveries din, dapat ipakita and isubtract siguro. Pero hindi kasi yan yung ating purpose, di ba? If you will observe sa China, 86,000 yung positive nila. Then 74,000 ang recovery. So 86 minus 74, 12,000 na lang yung kulang nila, di ba? Ngayon hindi naka-recover. Pero the 12,000, 3,000 of those kay dead. So ibig sabihin, 12,000 minus 3, 9,000 na lang, hindi pa naka-recover until now. So, I don't know. So, kung ganyan sana pag-present ng data, hindi tayo masyadong maa-alarm na, ay, hindi pa nga lumabas yung vaccine, pero meron nang naka-recover. Right? So, displays the data in a concentrated way. So, if you want to show data about historical information, a line chart pwede gamitin. So, wag gumamit ng mga pie chart if may data about time. Okay? May nakikita akong mga graphs na gusto niya ipakita ano daw nangyari from 1990 to 2020. Tapos yung pie chart niya. So, I don't know ano ang agenda niya, pero hindi appropriate sometimes yung ganyan. Facilitates data comparison and highlights trends and differences and illustrates messages, themes, or storylines in the accompanying data na ipapakita mo. To summarize about a good table or what to do, here are the selection guidelines. So, is the data time sequence? If yes, ilang data series ba? Kung 1 to 3 lang ka data series, you use column or line graph. If you have 4 to 6 data series and you want to show the relationship of parts to a whole, you can use area graph. If kung hindi, wala siyang relationship to parts to a whole, you use line graph. Okay? If your data walang time related, but the number of data series, kung isa lang ang data series niya, ibig sabihin isa lang yung data for the year 2020, for example, and you want to show the relationship, you want to show the pie graph. For example, ilan ba yung cases from March 2020 to July 2020? So, pwede mo ipakita by pie chart. And if you have, kung wala naman ipakita na relationship, you can use bar or column graph. If meron kang data series na 2 to 3, you can use bar or column graph. By the way, dito sa kabila, dito meron din column or line graph. But dito naman, bar ito siya for data series. And lastly, kung meron kang more than maraming data series, wag mong i-force na i-graph siya. But rather, you can use the table na dyan. Okay, so I hope you have a clear now understanding ano yung dapat gawin if you have the data sets. If you have any other concerns, you may email me for that concern. So thank you very much. Maraming salamat and hi all to my students in Philippine Science High School and to all my friends. So thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Madronero, for that very informative discussion on the different effective methods of presenting data. Indeed, data presentation is a very powerful communication tool, and it must be presented in an effective format to give solid understanding to its readers. Okay, so I think now our viewers and participants are ready to listen to our second speaker. Okay, so let me introduce to you now our second speaker for tonight. Our second speaker is currently the coordinator for Faculty Research Program at the Center for Policy, Research, and Development Studies in the University of San Jose Recoletos. He also served as a faculty member in the USJ-R College of Education, where he graduated as summa cum laude in his bachelor's degree. He was also a recipient of USJ-R University Leadership Award and St. Ezekiel Moreno Award. He ranked second in the licensure examination for teachers in the year 2010 and was also a national finalist in the Search for the Outstanding Students of the Philippines 2010. His expertise includes child and adolescent development, facilitating learning, and educational technology, ICT in education, special education, and research in education. In 2017, he presented his published paper in the prestigious research conference in University of Hawaii, Manua, Honolulu, USA. And being a grantee of CHED Graduate Studies Scholarship, he is presently pursuing PhD in education, major in research and evaluation at the University of San Carlos. Friends, let's all welcome Professor Ingilbert Pongan Reyes. Good evening, Sir Ingilbert.
Good evening, Mom Eda. Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Dean Justoni Bavia, for inviting me here. So I think Sir Nathan has given us a very good input. And I think Sir Nathan is also much well deserved to tackle this topic that I'm going to explain later. So the topic that I'm assigned to talk about is all about experimental research designs and threats to validity. Okay. So I think Mom Eda has already introduced me. So nevertheless, this is my current position as of the moment. I'm the coordinator for Faculty Research Program in CPRDS, University of San Jose Recoletos. And why this topic? I think most of the science students and teachers will benefit in this topic, especially where you're talking about experimental research. And I'm not just, in science, whether you're a high school teacher, elementary science teacher, or even senior high school science, or even college, you have physics, biology, chemistry, and you do a lot of experimentation. So I think this will benefit both students and teachers. Also for those who are undergoing research subjects, so both the research students and research teachers. So I hope they could learn from this topic. And then the social sciences researchers as well. So social sciences like psychology, education, sociology, or even political science. So there are a lot of other fields under social sciences, and most of in the field of psychology and education, they do experimental research as well. So I repeat, it's not only for natural or hard sciences, even social sciences, we do experimental research. So before I go tackle right away what experimental research is all about, let me first give you an overview of what a research design is. So to put it in a metaphor or in an analogy, a research design is like an architect's blueprint, and you know how important a blueprint is for an architect. All the details, the plans, must be there. All the aspects of the building must be there. So it's like the very the foundation of the structure. So just like for a researcher, the research design is uh, is like a blueprint, for collection, measure, analysis of data. So it refers to the structure of an inquiry from which the work plan flows, a plan for collecting evidence that can be used to answer a research question. And then I'd like to take note of this. It deals with logical problem, not logistical problem. When you say logistical problem, we're concerned about time, resources, convenience, or availability of these logistics. But research design doesn't concern about the logistics, but it's more of the logical problem, meaning to say we are primarily concerned on what are the steps, to be undertaken so that we are able to find solution to the problem, or we're able to address the research problem. So Maxwell in 1996 shared this interactive model for research design. As you can see, these are more or less the components in the research design. You have your purpose or your goal, why you should study this, what are your purposes. You have the conceptual framework and the conceptual context. What do you think is going on in your social environment at present, in the literature. So that's conceptual framework, conceptual context. There's also the methods. How are you going to do about your research, and how valid is your, how might you be wrong? So all of these actually is focused or centered on the research question. What do you really want to achieve? What do you really want to understand? What is really your problem, research problem? So basically, um, we do experimental research. It's because our research problem demands that an experimental research must be designed, must be used. No, experimental research design must be used. So it's not just, you have a lot of array, you have a wide array of options, and you just choose whatever you feel like. Oh, I'm just going to do survey here, or I'm just going to do descriptive, I know, whatever other research designs there are. So no, it depends on your research problem. It depends on your research question, and you align that. Okay, and then we also have so overall, research design is the overall strategy that you choose to integrate the different components of the study in a coherent. Okay, so when you say coherent, all of them are moving in one uniform, one direction and logical way, because again, you take into steps, logical steps, so that you'll be able to address the research problem. Now, this is where I'm leading to. So I was talking about research design. So when you say research design, there are a lot of types, and it's actually a continuum from the less rigorous to the more rigorous research design. And if you can see in the PowerPoint here, the more rigorous types would be quasi-experimental research design and true experimental research design. Exploratory, descriptive, exploratory, these are the less rigorous type. When you say rigorous, by the way, it meaning to say it's demanding, it's strict, it's very stringent. So quasi-experimental, true experimental research, pre-experimental research, these are highly demanding. These are very strict, very rigorous type of research. So now we tackle what experimental research design is all about. So when you say experimental research, okay, so these kind of pictures, would come out in our mind. We think of our high school experience, or elementary, or even in college, when we had laboratory science experiments, science investigatory projects, or like for teachers in education or in psychology, we remember Ivan Pavlov when he developed his classical conditioning theory, when he experimented with the dog and bell, the dog and bell experiment, how he conditioned the dog such that upon ringing the bell, even if there's no food, the dog salivated. And then there's also a very famous social experiment wherein two exactly the same cake, all right, was presented to a buyer, okay, but then there was free tasting. So the one is cheaper, okay, and the other is more expensive, so 50 pesos, 175 pesos. Then that buyer was asked, which do you think is tastier, upon having a free taste. And then the buyer said, oh, the more expensive one, I think, has the right texture, tastes way better than the cheap one. So this is a kind of social experiment. Okay, so most of the time we only think about a very laboratory, laboratory in confined experiment. But in psychology and education, we can do social experiments like this. You know, there's also another version of that they use wine, the same wine, but then one is priced higher. Okay, and the one who tasted it thinks that the more expensive it is, the better the quality, the better the taste, the better the product. So there's that bias. Okay, so there was an article that asked, does price tag have taste? It's very good article. And then of course, very common in the field of education, when education students or even masters or graduate school, when they think of utilizing experimental research design, they would immediately think about pre-test post-test design. You give a pre-test, then you give the intervention. It can be a new teaching strategy or the use of a manual or a technology. And then after using for quite a few times, then you do post-test. So this is another very common, okay, type of experimental research design. So if we define experimental research design, so it says here that it refers to how the participants or subjects, because it's not always people. Subjects, meaning to say plants, animals, can also be subjected to experiments. So they are allocated to the different conditions in an experiment. Okay, and then there's also because we're talking about experiment, makes use of manipulation and control testing in order to understand causal processes and relationships. So compared to, for example, correlational design, research design, wherein you're just looking at how two concepts, variables are related or connected or associated. But here in experimental research design, what we're trying to prove really is whether the cause is really the cause to this effect. So it's more powerful than say they are related. Okay, so when you say cause, there is really a strong relationship. No, so when one changes, the other will really be affected. So it's causal relationship. So what is an experiment? Of course, so it's a process of testing hypotheses. So which includes the manipulation of the settings, and requires at least two treatment, because the basic, okay, when you do experiment, the basic treatment should be no treatment with treatment. So that's the basic, at least. No, so you can go more levels. So it can go 5 treatments. No, so it depends on your research design. And again, the main goal is to establish a causal relationship between the variables. Now, take note that we do experimentations not to test, the subjects, but to test the effects, okay, of the manipulated variable, or we call it the independent variable. Okay, whether the fertilizer you're using is really effective, whether the amount of sleep that you took would really matter. So we're testing that, we're not concerning more of the subject or the participant, but more of the independent variable. Now, these are some sample hypotheses that can be used as a springboard for experimental research. Okay, so say for example, your hypothesis is 10% of the white do still have racial biases against the black. You know what happened in the United States? There are a lot of protests. Black Lives Matter. Then cognitive behavior therapy. So I think special education, experts are familiar with this. CBT produces less relapse than antidepressants. So you have to prove that, no, whether CBT really produce less relapse than antidepressants. The homemade ABC fertilizer is more effective and cheaper than the commercially available fertilizer. So these are sample hypotheses. And if you notice, there is always this variable X and variable Y, the independent variable and the dependent variable. So yes, and there's also, like right now, all countries are racing towards finding that cure, that vaccine for COVID. So will this newly developed vaccine be effective in treating COVID-19? that in itself is a very good, example of how experimental research design must be utilized or used. No? So for it to be proven that the vaccine that you created is a foolproof, really effective, it has to undergo some kind of experimentation. And then you also have, of course, the advantages, no? And the disadvantages of experimental research. These are some of the few things that are listed. Advantages can determine a causal relationship by excluding other intervening factors. So we omit some factors, so therefore we really establish the direct relationship, causal relationship between two variables. We control also other variables, no, outside factors. It does away with self-report bias or social desirability. I think other research design like descriptive, uh, explanatory, survey, we tend to what do you call this? We tend it allows free or loose interpretation. No, there is subjectivity when we do descriptive survey. There is that room for subjectivity, but in experimental research, we lessen that room for subjectivity because we really focus on um, how accurate is your finding, okay, how valid are your results. Information is not limited to what the subject or the participant can recall, especially for qualitative researches like you do phenomenology, you interview people, you do ethnography. When you interview people, sometimes we're just under the mercy of their what they can recall, what they can process in their mind. So there are a lot of validity issues there, no subjectivity issues there. So that's the advantage of when we have experimental research. We lessen that those kinds of threats. The disadvantages, though, would be first, the more we control various factors, the less we can attribute the results to the outside world. So sometimes, like in a laboratory, we control the humidity, we control the temperature, we control the water, the time. Everything is so controlled that sometimes it's not anymore reflective to the real world, to the natural world. So as we increase the internal validity, which is the causality, we also decrease its generalizability, and we call that the external validity. How generalizable is your research? No? So if you have experimental research and then you're able to produce results, is the result that you have generalizable? Okay, so that's a very good actually point of debate or discussion. How do we meet halfway? We have internal, it's internally valid, but it's also externally valid. And another problematic there is the artificiality of the setting, no? Because when we do experiment, because when we control factors like the settings, the time, air conditioned room, air conditioned room, sometimes it's not anymore again realistic. Okay, so it becomes artificial. So what is a variable? So variables are any factors that can take on different values for an experiment, any conditions or characteristics. So here, these conditional characteristics are manipulated, controlled, or observed by an experimenter. And then variable, uh, for example, you're trying to look at how this fertilizer affect the growth of this plant. So what are variables that may be considered in that experiment? So you look at the amount of sunlight, whether it's inside the room or outside the room, or inside the house, outside the house. You also look at the temperature, the humidity present in the environment, this type of soil that you use, the type of plant that you use, the type of pot even that you use. So these are, there are a lot of variables that you should be able to account for. Okay, so in this, for example, in education, when we do experimental research, sometimes we look at, how effective is a new training program. So the variables might be, okay, final test scores, okay, which usually serve as our dependent variable, students' age, time spent on the training program, time to complete the final test, students' gender, students' ratings of the training program, and many more. So you see, in a single experiment, a lot of factors would come into play. And then you have major types of variables. So I kept on mentioning this already. So the IV is the independent variable. It is the variable that the experimenter changes or controls. And the experimenter is assumed to have a direct effect on the dependent variable. So the independent variable is simply your treatment, okay? Your intervention. So you control it, you change it so that it will have an effect on the dependent variable, say, for example, on the test score of the child. So that's dependent variable. Dependent variable, if we define it again, it's the variable being tested, being measured in an experiment. So basically, dependent variable is dependent on the independent variable. So sometimes, like if you use SPSS or Minitab, they would have different names, okay? So independent may also be labeled as the cause dependent effect. Independent may be predictor, the response is the dependent. It can also be grouping, resulting, intervention, or outcome. Now, some experts would actually suggest this mnemonics or this acronym dry mix so that you will not forget. Okay, dry, dependent, responding, the y-axis. And what is the y-axis? Is it the vertical or the horizontal? So the y-axis there is the vertical. Okay, then the mix, manipulation, independent, the x-axis or the vertical, the horizontal. Sorry, the horizontal axis. So just for you to not forget. Okay, so always remember dry mix. So if it's dependent, it's the responding, it's the y-axis. If it's the independent, it's the manipulation or the x-axis. So if you look at this graph or picture here, no pictograph, where is our independent variable or variables? And what is our dependent variable? So if you notice, our independent variable, what is manipulated? So there are two, amount of water and there's also amount of fertilizer. Now, the dependent variable, we're measuring the same thing, no? The height of plant, so whether short and long. No? So it's the effect or the result. So basically, that's what DV and IVs are. Okay. Another third major type, which most people fail to account for or fail to look into, would be the extraneous variable. We're so good at uh, pointing which one is the IV and which one is the DV, but oftentimes we disregard the extraneous variables. So extraneous variables are all variables which are not considered as independent variable, but they could potentially affect results of the experiment. So all other variables that you fail to account, okay, that have the potential to have an effect on the results, okay, you call that extraneous variable. Now, there's also a special extraneous variable, and we call it confounding variable. Confounding variables are extraneous variables that you fail to control, and as a result, it indeed has affected the results, right, or your DV, apart from the IV. So once that extraneous variable do really have an impact to your DV, now it is considered a confounding variable. Okay, I hope that's clear enough. So say for example, I have here another pictograph. So you have independent variable and you have condition A, condition B, with treatment, without treatment, and then influencing the dependent variable. So you can see that there, right? So what do you think are the possible uh, okay, so this is the extraneous variables are here located here, okay, but then if you fail to control it, it would really have an impact to the dependent variable. So that's what you call confounding. Okay, so I have an example actually translating this to a context. For example, your independent variable is caffeine, all right? And you know where can you find caffeine? Coffee or tea, right? So you're trying to look at whether drinking coffee will have an impact to how well they can recall a certain number of words. All right, so that is your dependent variable. You measure the number of words they're able to recall, and the treatment that you gave was giving them some caffeine. Now, what could be our potentially extraneous variables here? So variables that may come into play here that may have an effect on the dependent variable can be the time of the day, whether it's morning or evening or afternoon. So it matters. No, it can also possibly affect the result. And the type of caffeine that you give, whether it's tea or coffee, that will also matter. And even the noise. No, when you have the participants recall those number of words, and if it's very noisy or not so noisy, it also matters. So these are what you call extraneous variables. Now, if they indeed really have an effect on the dependent variable and you're not able to control it, it becomes confounding variable. All right. I hope it's clear as crystal. All right. Next is two basic groups in an experiment. So this is very well known, I think. There are only two groups. We have the experimental group, or also known as treatment group. This group receives the treatment or intervention. Okay, so you have the manipulated variable, you have the treatment, you have the new training design, you have the new pill, you have the new COVID vaccine. You give that to that group, and then you call that group as experimental treatment group. The other group is what you call control or placebo group. You say placebo, it's nothing drug, all right? It's just nothing. So usually when pharmaceuticals develop some kind of medicines and they want to test the effectiveness of this new pill or new medicine, they would use placebo, all right? So one group will receive the newly invented medicine, while the other group will receive a pill, all right, but the pill is just sugar, the pill is just nothing, okay? But then they call it placebo. Sometimes they get better, their condition gets better just because they thought they drank some kind of medicine, only to find out that it's just a nothing drug. So you call that placebo group. So this group receives no treatment or intervention, or else receives standard treatment that can be understood as a baseline. So you also have to, I'd also like to highlight on this, because in education, for example, you have an experimental research, okay? So you have treatment groups. So your treatment or your experimental group, for example, you are testing a new a new teaching strategy, okay? So that will be for the experimental group. What about for the control group? Of course, it cannot be that they receive nothing. So our control group then, what they receive, they still receive something, but the standard treatment. And what is that? Traditional teaching strategy, okay? So you have experimental group receiving a new teaching strategy, while the control group receives the traditional teaching strategy. So you call that the baseline, all right? Can be understood as a baseline. Serves as a comparison group. So that is very important there. Control group will serve as a comparison group or point of comparison. So I have another pictograph here. So as you can see, you have new medicine and you have your participants. Okay, so histamine level. So you're measuring histamine level and level of drowsiness. Okay, so which do you think here is our control group or groups, if there is more than one? And which do you think here is our treatment or the manipulated group, no? Or groups if there are more? Do you have your guess? Okay, so basically that one group there, okay, that receives nothing, you call that control group. Or if they receive something but then it's nothing, still nothing drug, placebo, you call that control group. The rest of the three here, okay, is what we call our experimental groups. Okay, so very easy. Now let's proceed to the three essential elements in experimental research. So people get confused oftentimes how is quasi different from true experimental research, and how are these two also different from pre-experimental research. it matters on the completeness of these three essential elements called the MCR: manipulation, control, and randomization. When one or two is missing, it cannot be true experimental research. No? It can either be quasi or pre-experimental research. So later on, I'll explain more on that. But let's go first on each element. All right. So these three elements are really important. The first is manipulation. Manipulation is simply how you introduce, how you give, how you remove, or how you change a variable. So how you give the treatment, remove, or introduce the treatment, there is some kind of manipulation there. It's the ability of the researcher and thus the design to interact with the study subjects to effectively direct the independent variable. Okay? So you can see here in this pictograph the different types of manipulated variables. All right? So see, let me, okay. So I'm pointing my cursor here: presence, absence, independent variable, type independent variable, and amount independent. So these are the three types of independent variables, by the way. So if you only have with and without treatment, so you call that presence, absence, IV. If you have a kind of independent variables and you're using different drugs, different fertilizers, different strategies, you call that type IV. Okay, so most, I think, only very few, uh, average learner know about this. Okay, and then the third is the amount IV. So it's the same type, only that the amount is different. For example, you have 10 milligrams, 25 milligrams, and 50 milligrams. So you call that the different types of IV. And there's also IV, types of IV depending on the number of levels. So if there are only two levels, like level 1 and level 2 only, you call it bivalent. Okay. But if you have three or more levels, that becomes multivalent. No? So multivalent here. Right. So if it's gender, it's bivalent because male, female. No. All right. So those are some examples. Now let's proceed to control. Control is the extent to which different factors in an experiment are accounted for. It also talks about whether the researcher has influence over the study environment itself, and it prevents the influence of outside factors, also known as extraneous variables, from influencing the outcome of the study or the results of the study. So if we go back to our example previously, so you have caffeine experiment, no caffeine and the number of words they can recall. So you have identified the extraneous variables, right? The time of day, tea, coffee, and noise can be extraneous variables. So what do you think? How do you control this? So when you say in an experimental research design or experimental research, you have to control these extraneous variables. So how do you control this? First, okay, so a while ago, so we have time of day here. You already have all of them are tested at the same time, 9 a.m. So nobody's tested in the afternoon, nobody's tested in the evening. So here, no caffeine drinks for 12 hours, previously. And then all of them utilize a quiet environment. So these are some controls, okay? So this is what I'm talking about, the control. And then you also have randomization. So randomization refers to how subjects are assigned to study groups. They call it random assignment. And also refers to how subjects are sampled or chosen to be part of the study. So if you look at this, for example, you want to you're trying to give pretest post-test, all right, to grade 8 students, and there are a total population of 200, right? And by way of selecting them is based on their IQ, and of course, in a normal curve in an IQ, there will always be 20% of them would be high IQ, 20% at the bottom, and the rest are in the middle. So, say for example, 40. So out of that, 240 are high IQ, 40 are low IQ, and all the rest are falling in the average. So, in randomization, first you do random selection. Okay, so you say 30, 30, 30. You get random 30 from that 40. You get random 30 from 120, and you get random 30 from 40 low IQ students. Okay, random. After that, these 30, 30, 30 will be randomly assigned also as to which group will they be. Control group or experimental group, no, group A or group B. So 15 random students will be group A, 15 random students will be group B, 15 random. So something like that. This is a very good randomization. It cannot be that uh, you maintain the impact class. For example, section Adelpha and section Sampaguita. Section Adelpha will be we randomly assign them to be our experimental group, and section Sampaguita will be our control group. It cannot be like that. Every individual must be really reshuffled, randomized, no? Because we're defeating the purpose of randomization if the impact group remains. Okay? And then, how do we randomize, by the way, student? So we can ask them to just fall in line randomly and then left, right, drawing by lots, or using a computer randomizer. MS Excel can do that. There's a software for that, or even flipping a coin. Okay, so these are some of the very basic, even primitive way of randomizing your participants. All right, and then what are some types of experimental research? So this is the meat already, no? So three types of experimental research. So according to nature of settings, there are three types. Either it's a lab experiment, field experiment, or natural experiment. So a lab experiment, so you know what pharmaceuticals would do, those who are developing COVID vaccine. So everything is highly controlled. The temperature, the humidity, the materials, the apparatus, everything is highly controlled, okay? So that there will be accurate measurements as much as possible. The only, the pro here, the main pro here is it's easy to replicate, because if everything is really stated that the temperature must be this level, humidity must be this level, so it can be replicated in another laboratory. But again, we are also losing the naturalness of it, of the setting. So we are somehow becomes very artificial here, very unreal, not because everything is so controlled. Then you also have field experiments, and we always think of field experiments. We usually do this for wild animals or for plants, okay, because they are in in their natural settings, no, in their own forest, they're in their own lot, no. So we do field experiments. Field experiments are done in the everyday life environment. Okay, the experimental manipulates the independent variable, but in a real life setting. So the problem here is we cannot control some extraneous variables. We cannot control the type of soil. We cannot control the amount of sunlight. We cannot control other factors surrounding the participant or the subject. So that's the problem of field experiment. Now, there's also natural experiment, but natural experiment is more applicable to people. If field experiment is more of animals and wildlife or wild creatures, natural experiment is more of, in the natural class setting, or those kids adopted, in their foster homes, or in orphanage. So we call this natural experiments. They're conducted in everyday, still at real life environment. But here the experimenter has no control over the IV as it occurs naturally in real life. So the problem with both field and natural experiments is that it's hard to replicate, because every setting will have their own unique conditions that would be hard to replicate, because there are things that you do not control. You just let it flow naturally. And then there's also another types of experimental research, but this is according to how the subjects or participants are allocated to different conditions. You have independent measures, repeated measures, and matched pairs. Now, this is the first type is what you call independent measure. So independent measure is a type of experimental research design, also known as between groups. Each condition of the experiment includes a different group of participants. So they are independent, totally. So the two groups are totally independent, okay? So you have here, for example, your treatment or your IV is the amount of sleep, okay? So one group has only 2 hours, so very little amount of sleep, and the other group has 10 hours, okay? Your DV what you're going to measure at the end would be their reaction time. So, for example, you let them catch a ball. How quick are they in catching the ball? And then to see whether really sleep would affect you their reaction time. So, in independent measure, it's very simple. You get 10 students and another different 10 students. So, and then they are group A and group B. Simple as that. So you call that independent measure. Repeated measure is also known as within groups. And here, each condition of the experiment will include the same group of participants. So this is the ano na the quite parang level up, no? The challenge is leveled up. So here, both groups will be exposed to the different treatment. Okay. So if we use the example a while ago, for example, sleep. So for example, Group A, in this first week, they will only have 2 hours of sleep. Group B will have 10 hours of sleep. In the second week, they will exchange places. Group A will now have 10 hours of sleep, while Group B will now have 2 hours of sleep. So simple as that. That's repeated measure. So in my example here in my diagram, so you can see here Group A, Group B. So on the first week, they learn words with very loud noise. That's Group A. While Group B learn words with no noise. On the second week, they exchange places now. Learn words with noise, while here learn words plus loud noise. So there is what you call counterbalancing. Both groups experience the same thing. Okay, and I think this is more valid. No, this is more. This is a stronger type of experimental research design. Now, another type is what you call match pairs. All right. Each condition uses different but similar participants. There is an effort that's made to match the participants in each condition in terms of any important characteristic which might affect performance, like gender, age, intelligence. So here in the match pair, before you do the experiment, you really make sure that there is match. So one very intelligent student here, in the other group there's also one very intelligent group, one very medyo dull or not so intelligent student, and there's also another from the other group. So there's representative, one male, male, female, female. Okay, this age, this age. So the problem here is that when one student is absent, you have to remove the matched pair in the other group. Okay, so instead of losing just one student, automatically you'll lose two students right away. So you call that match pairs. This is to ensure really that other variables like intelligence, intelligence can also affect their reaction time, or their being athletic, sporty could also affect how well do they react, no? So things like that. And then you'll also have types of research based on the completeness of the design. So this is also this is higher level. I've only learned about this in my PhD. Okay, so for those teachers who are watching right now, so you're very lucky at least to get to be exposed with these types of other types of experimental research. So according to MCR, it can be true experiment, quasi experiment, or quasi experiment, and pre-experiment. So when you say true experiment, all the three, the MCR is there. Okay, so randomization, manipulation, and control. If control is missing, okay, it becomes pre-experiment. But if there is manipulation and there's also randomization, it becomes quasi. So you look at the flow chart here. Are participants randomly assigned? If yes, then that is true experiment. If no, is there a control or comparison group? If yes, that is quasi-experiment. But if no, you call it pre-experiment. So I hope that is clear enough. Okay? Now, I know that majority of us only know one experimental research design, especially in education and psychology. We only use the pre-test, post-test design. Okay? But there are actually a lot. Okay, so for pre-experimental, you have one-shot case study, one group pre-test, post-test, and static group. For pre-experimental, you have pre-test, post-test control, post-test only, and then Solomon 4, then time series, multiple. So most of us have applied this pre-test, post-test control group, no? And I had also a group of advisees who did Solomon 4 group, which is a very good uh, um, experimental research design. So just to acquaint you, I will not be really delving on, the nitty gritty, the pros and cons of each, but I'll just show you how the usual setup of it. Okay, so the legend here. Okay, if you say X, so X here, you call that treatment. Okay, so these are the treatment. The O, all right. O1 is pre-test, O2 is post-test. So you have here one-shot case study, you give a treatment, and then you give post-test, so no pre-test. When you say one group pre-test, post-test, this is actually the usual, not very common. Pre-test, treatment, post-test. When you say static group comparison, you don't give any pre-test. So one group will have treatment post-test, other group only post-test. So if you notice, there is missing comparison group. We call that a pre-experimental design. No? Okay. Quasi design fare better than pre-experimental. So this is the most common, the pre-test, post-test, non-equivalent group. So pre-test for both group, then the different two different treatments, and then post-test. Time series design. So pre-test, pre-test, treatment, post-test, post-test. Non-equivalent before and after design. So the same thing, but you have two groups, two different treatments. And then you also have post-test equivalent groups. So R, by the way, is randomization. So what makes true experimental as really a true experimental when there's randomization involved already. So when there's randomization, then treatment, then observation or post-test. So that's post-test equivalent groups, pre-test, post-test equivalent groups, and this is the most ideal pre-test, post-test equivalent groups. These are a very good true experimental research design. And there's the Solomon 4 group, Latin square, randomized, factorial split. So some of these are used in the field of agriculture, no? So when they do experiment, Solomon 4 group is used in psychology and education as well. Latin square and randomized, they can be used in engineering and other fields. Now, I think I'm almost done. Okay, I'll just make this quick. So let's talk about validity. Validity is an important term in research that pertains to conceptual scientific soundness of research study. So your research design is useless or pointless if there is no validity, there's no scientific soundness. The primary purpose of all research is to produce valid conclusions. So if there are problems with the validity, then that would be really bad, no? So your research would be useless. Types of validity, you have internal and external validity, but I think for this time I'm just only going to cover internal validity because we lack the luxury of time. So the difference between internal and external is this: when you say internal validity, this concerns of how true that the cause is the real cause, all right? Focus on causality. External validity, on the other hand, is concerned on the generalizability, whether this research, this experiment is reflective of the real world setting. Okay. So internal validity, the ability of research design to rule out or more make implausible alternative explanations of the results. Okay. That the independent variable was directly responsible, no, and no other variables are, are if affecting, okay, the dependent variable. So ultimately, results for the results found is the okay. So causality, determining the cause and effect that exists between variables. So there's in 2013, this became a headline in New York. When ice cream sales rise, so do homicides. Coincidence? Or will your next cone murder you? So apparently, a lot of statisticians have found out that when ice cream sales increase, there's also the rise of the number of murder happening in New York. And there is really almost 100% positive correlation. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. Now, if you are an average person, you would think, what are we saying that ice cream becomes the cause of murder? That becomes nonsense. Okay, so although it was true that there is some correlation, this is now where causation comes in. How causation is becomes different from correlation. Okay, so causation will have to be there should be a very clear connection. There must be the cause and effect relationship. Whereas correlation is simply looking at the numbers statistically and seeing that whether their trend jives together. Okay, so actually in this research, in this article, it was found out that it's not really the ice cream that was the cause of murder, but it's more of the rising temperature. When it becomes summer, when there's more heat, people become more irritable and more hot-headed, so they commit murder. No? So that was the explanation actually. So internal validity, in order to postulate a cause and effect relationship, these conditions must be met. The cause and the effect must be closely associated with each other. The cause must precede the effect. And the relationship and association must not be explainable by other variables. So these are very basic conditions that must be followed. Okay. So here are the 4 types of extraneous variables. So I think I'll end with demand characteristics. So first is situational variables. These are aspects of the environment that might affect the participant's behavior. Time of the day, all right? So for example, you're giving math test. What time are you giving it? Is it morning or afternoon? Because that can affect. No? If it's afternoon, most probably they would have a poor performance in math. Day of the week, whether it's Monday or Friday, sometimes Friday is a very tiring, exhaustive day already, so they might not perform really well. Temperature also, you're giving this test in one classroom that has an air conditioning unit, and the other classroom they only had fan. So that will matter. And then there's lighting as well, noise. So all of these are what you call situational variables. Variables within the situation, aspects in the environment that would affect the result of the study. How to deal with eliminate, or if you can't eliminate, make it constant, keeping all conditions similar to all groups. Now, I have a sample problem here. What if you cannot eliminate nor hold settings constant? For example, you have 2 treatment conditions. Each treatment is good for an hour and a half. You're able to book room 1 on Tuesdays only for 1 hour and 30 minutes, and room 2 on Wednesdays only for 1 hour and 30 minutes. But there were no other rooms and time available. What are the possible extraneous variables, and what can you do about them? So this is a very although this is theoretical, but this is a very plausible, problematic situation, an experiment. So we do counterbalancing. Here, we distribute the effect of the extraneous variable. So as I've said, if you remember the repeated measure, okay. So room 1, on the first week, treatment 1A, room 2, treatment 1B. Next week, all right, so treatment 2A, and then treatment 2B. So there's that exchange, exchange of places. Next threat is the participant or person variable. This refers to the ways which each participant varies from the other and how this could affect the result. So the participant's mood, all right, intelligence, their personal qualities or characteristics, anxieties, nervousness, all right, concentration, level of concentration. This can affect your data or results, the test that you're giving, okay? So how do we deal if, one class is very energetic, the other class is very negative, one class is very intelligent, the other is not so. So you have to make sure that it's balanced. You do match pairs, no? So the most brilliant, the less brilliant, the most anxious, so make sure that each of these characteristics are well represented in both groups, okay? So you make a sound research design. Hawthorne effect. If you can see in the picture, this is the 1920s Hawthorne suburb in Chicago. And this is a very big factory And why are we calling it Hawthorne effect? Because when the manager and supervisors come to check the factory workers tend to really perform really their best. Okay, so that is what Hawthorne effect is all about. Hawthorne effect is the tendency of the participants of research to change their behavior when they are aware that they're being observed. Okay, so that's Hawthorne effect. Then there's also John Henry effect. If you have seen this animated feature film, John Henry is actually an American folk hero. So he's a black, during the slaves era. So he was a black slave, but then when the committee was informed that instead of building the railway manually, there will be a machine to come in. So he tried to outperform the machine, but then he died in the end. So that was the story. The John Henry effect is all about the tendency of the participants in the control group to take the experimental situation as a challenge. And so the control group will exert more effort to beat the experimental group. So you call that John Henry effect. Okay. And then there's also what we call Rosenthal or Pygmalion effect. So if you see this guy, this is Robert Rosenthal. He's a psychologist who also developed this self-prophecy effect or the self-expectancy effect. And then Pygmalion, it can also be known as Pygmalion effect because, in the Greek mythology, Pygmalion created a sculpture, and then later on, he fell in love with that beautiful lady sculptor. No? So what is Rosenthal and Pygmalion effect again? So Rosenthal and Pygmalion effect is the tendency of the participants to change their behaviors brought about by the experimenter's expectation. So if I'm the researcher, I'm the experimenter, and I would tell them, I expect you to be really performing this task really well. So yes, I okay. See, sir, almost done, almost done. So you call that Rosenthal or Pygmalion effect. And then you also have novelty effect. So what is novelty effect? Novelty effect is the tendency for performance to initially improve when a new treatment or technology is instituted. So when they see that there's a new technique or new technologies that is strange to them, they would tend to have high level of interest and they would really do their best. No? They try to perform really, really better. And then there's also order effect. Okay, so order effect is refers to the changes in participants' performance due to their repeating the same or similar test more than once. And there are two types. You have fatigue and practice. Practice effect when there is an improvement in performance on the task due to repetition. So you let them do the task repeatedly, and because they are able to practice well, they perform really better. On the other side, fatigue effect can also happen. Because of repeated performance, there is a decrease in performance due to repetition. They become fatigued, they become tired, or because of boredom. And then there's also, you call this resentful demoralization and compensatory rivalry. So this occurs when you say compensatory rivalry. This occurs when the control group knows what the program group is getting and therefore develop a competitive attitude. Resentful demoralization is when the control group knows that the other group got a desirable treatment, so they are discouraged, so they won't perform better. So it's just the opposite. Okay, so demand characteristics. So there are also clues wherein the experimenter would give demands to their expectations to their subjects or participants. So the surroundings, the researcher's characteristics, the researcher's behavior, and participants can interpret what is going on in the situation. So how to do about it? You keep the environment natural. You do double-blind methodology. You use well-developed research protocols. You minimize experimental role and no data snooping or peeking at data before sample is collected. So, for example, single blind experiment. We can discuss to our experiment what is going to happen to them in the experiment. We can also keep them fully informed the purpose of study, but we keep them blind on one thing. We do not tell them what treatment condition they're in. You do not tell them that you are in the experimental group. You do not tell them that you are in control group. And then there's also double blind, wherein both the experimenter and the participants don't know this is the experimental group and this is the control group. So that can happen when the researcher would hire another person to serve as experimenter. Okay. So sometimes the best way to also remediate is through cover story. So you make, a story as if, a way to cover up your intention and to cover up also of them, preventing them from knowing that they're under experimentation. Okay. So I think that ends I would end with a quote, no, because I'm losing time already. So sorry for extending a bit. So I'd like to end with this very nice quote from James Adams: "No wise man tries every day what he has proved wrong the day before." So this is what experiment is all about. Experiment is the cornerstone of development. We should continue doing trial and error, because if we don't do that, we'll only have error. So we keep on making mistakes, we learn from our mistakes, and that's how we develop and improve. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for having me. Back to you, Ma'am Eda.
Thank you so much, Sir Bert. I know that our viewers and participants learned so much with regards to conducting experimental research. Your comprehensive presentation, sir, is very helpful, especially in choosing which type of experimental research design suits best our research, as well as how to avoid and control threats to validity. Thank you so much, Sir Bert.
Thank you, Ma'am Eda.
Okay, so at this moment, we will now be entertaining questions from our viewers. So if you have some questions or clarifications, kindly write it in the chat box or comment section found at the bottom of your screen. However, due to time constraint, we can only cater up to 2 questions, and that will be one from our Zoom participants and one from our FB Live viewer. And for those, don't worry, for those questions which are not asked on air or online, don't worry, we will try our very best to answer all your queries in our COE Hallway FB page. Okay, so let's have now our Zoom participants. Do you have some questions? Or perhaps you still need more time? Okay. By the way, if you want to indicate as to whom are you going to address your question, you may do so. Just write the name of the speaker along with the question. Okay, so there's none yet from our Zoom participants. So let's try to check our FB page. Okay, so we have one question here. I think this is addressed to Sir Jonathan. Okay, this is from Ma'am Annabelle Quino. Okay, sir, you mentioned earlier that as much as possible, do not put any color. But what about if you're going to present a financial data? Are you not going to color those numbers with red for emphasis of negative values? And why?
Okay. Instead of putting a negative value, usually ang ginagawa nila is to put a parenthesis to indicate negative values, because sometimes when you print the report, you photocopy it, hindi may emphasize yung color, nagiging black and white na siya. So, sayang ang yung gusto mo i-emphasize. Then usually, yung mga colored na report, when you reproduce them, nagiging lighter, yung shade ng color niya. So, if you want to emphasize, for example, sa financial report na negative siya, you can put it in a parenthesis. Yan yung ginagawa usually. Or lagyan ng negative value or the negative dash sign to indicate na negative siya. If the event na gina-practice sa inyo, yung kailangan siyang kulayan, then hindi na po ako makakaano dyan if that's the real practice sa inyo. But for me, I suggest, para ma-minimize yung cost sa color, and when you reproduce kasi, gaya sinabi ko, nawawala yung kulay, you will put it in a parenthesis or the dash sign, yung negative dash sign. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Jonathan. Okay, here's another question. I think this is addressed to Sir Engelbert.
Yes.
Um, can you point out the uniqueness? This is from, by the way, JC Bermoy Dugos. Okay. Can you point out the uniqueness of experimental to the other types of research like exploratory, survey, etc.?
As I've said, experimental research design really established causality or cause and effect. Unlike other research design, it's kind of weak because you cannot really say, for example, correlational design. You're just saying that they're correlated, you're related or associated, but it's not really that the cause is the cause to this effect. But when you say experimental research, really you're establishing a strong connection that this effect happens because of this cause. So in experimental research, it's powerful in a sense that it underwent rigid process to establish that cause and effect relationship.
Okay, thank you, Sir Vert. Actually, those two questions are from our FB viewers because
Wow.
because our Zoom participants have not asked any question a while ago, but now there's one question from our Zoom participant. Is it okay if I will just read it, just to be fair
Yes.
with our participants from Zoom? Okay, so this is a question from Sir Bonifar Barloado. In doing research, sometimes we are at the mercy of the whims of the research advisor. How can we address that problem? And thank you.
Go ahead, Sir Gilbert.
Okay. Also experienced being an advisor and an advisee as well. And I think the idea there is that the relationship of an advisor and advisee is like mentor-mentee. So the mentee is there to always listen and to be open always to the advices of the mentor. So that becomes a problem actually because there are times wherein you personally do not agree with your advisor, but in the academic hierarchy, the system is always like that. You have no choice but really to follow and to fulfill the request of your advisor, because you're the one being under the mentorship. Okay, so you're the student, and your advisor is the one up there, okay, having the authority over you. So I think it's important that you have also an open mind to receive these comments and feedbacks with a happy heart and find the silver lining, even if you think that the criticisms are too much, no. So I think that's the only advice that I could give. How about you, Sir Nathan?
For me, I'm also handling research din sa mga students ko. Una ko talaga tinatanong sa mga students ko, ano yung research mo all about? In the event na hindi ko talaga maintindihan yung research niya, for me, I will recommend another person na believe ko na may alam sa topic na gusto niya. I will not force myself as an advisor na dito ka sa akin dahil gusto ko ito, because at the end of the day, ayaw ko kasing may stress yung bata dahil hindi niya alam yung topic na ako yung may gusto. When we do research, dapat tayo ang gusto. Gusto ko itong gawin, gusto ko gawin ito. Then, in the time na hindi ko alam, that's the time na mag-suggest ako nga, ito, si Sir, ano ang lapitan mo? Mas alam niya ito. So, if you will say na at the mercy of the whims of the research advisor, I think the first question is, ano ba ang topic na gusto ko at bakit sa aking bakit dyan na advisor ka napunta? Baka gusto ko kasi si Sir, for example, sabihin ko si Sir Gestoni, gusto ko si Sir Gestoni yung advisor ko dahil cool si Sir Gestoni, gusto ko doon si Sir dahil approachable. Pero at the end of the day, hindi pala kayo makakatugma, hindi kayo the same wavelength ng understanding. So, madidefeat ang purpose ng research. So, for me, start with the topic and find a very good research advisor that will help you. Yun lang po sa akin.
Wow. If only all research advisors are like you, Sir Nathan.
Buyag, buyag.
Thank you so much, Sir Nathan and Sir Bert. No, we are very lucky to have two of very passionate researchers with us tonight. Okay, so since we are done with answering 2 questions from our participants, it is now time for our trivia questions. Okay, I know that you are all excited for our trivia tonight because the first one to give us the correct answer will be given 100 pesos worth of GCash load. Okay, so I will be asking 2 questions, one for our Zoom participants and another one for our FB Live viewers. Okay, are you all ready? Okay, so let me start with our Zoom participants. Okay, your question is, can you give me one type of table that can be used in data presentation? Zoom? Again, can you give me one type of table that can be used in data presentation? Anybody from our Zoom participants? Okay, so we now have a winner. This is A.E. Reyes. Her answer is reference table. Very good. That's correct. Okay,
Wow,
so
may
A.E.
nakinig talaga. Thank you.
A.E. Reyes, can you please give me a private message as to how are we going to send you your 100 pesos of worth of GCash load? Can you please give me the details, your GCash account, and your name also? Just send me a private message. Okay, now let's proceed now to our FB Live viewers. Okay, so my question for the FB viewers is, okay, this is a process of testing a hypothesis. What do you call the process of testing a hypothesis? Again, it is a process of testing a hypothesis. Anybody? Very good. We now have a winner. And she is Santa Rita. And the correct answer is experiment. Okay, the first one to give me the correct answer among our FB Live viewers is Santa Rita. Okay, so Santa Rita, can you please send the USJ-R COE hallway page a private message with regards to your details, your name, and your GCash account, okay, so that we can send you your prize later. Okay, so congratulations again to all our lucky winners. So friends, I know that you are wondering and at the same time excited as to what our next session in the webinar series is all about. So I would like to welcome Mrs. Jacqueline Visitacion, a faculty of our USJ-R department, to give us an overview of our next webinar session, and that will be on July 10th. Okay, good evening, Ma'am Visitacion.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. In behalf of the USJ-R College of Education, we would like to invite you once again for another webinar session. And this will be about parents and guardians' role in the new form of education and netiquettes for learners in the new normal. This will be on July 10, 2020, Friday at 7 o'clock in the evening, Philippine Standard Time. Our speakers are Mrs. Georgian D. Orias, Master of Arts in Education, Principal, USJ-R Elementary Department, and Ms. Frenchie V. Regino, Master of Arts in Education, Pupil Activity Program Coordinator, USJ-R Elementary Department. For more information on how to register for free, visit USJ-R COE Hallway Facebook page and YouTube channel. Save the date and see you on the next webinar.
Okay, thank you so much, Ma'am Visitacion. Again, here in COE, we always have exciting topics for all of you to look forward to. Okay, so at this moment, may I call on again our beloved Dean of the College of Education for some words of thanks and for his closing remarks. Sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Miss Edda. We just have to take this one for a while. Okay, so wow, what a load of information that we learned tonight from two of our dear speakers. Actually, I even write down, some very important notes because I truly learned a lot from them tonight. And this information can really be used and shared, especially to our undergraduate and even to our graduate program. So thank you so much to our dear speakers. We learned from our dear speaker. The first speaker said that picture really paints 1,000 words, and that is actually one of the very striking reflection when we present our data and information. So therefore, as our speaker had mentioned a while ago, that in research presentation, graphs, tables, pictures should really stand alone. And it must appropriately, therefore, represent right information to avoid wrong interpretation, and at the same time, to ensure as well that we provide not the fake news or the fake information as well. We also learned from our second speaker that in recognizing the cause-effect relationship in experimental research, therefore the research design is like an architect's blueprint. So he clearly established that in establishing such cause and effect relationship in research, it should therefore undergo a very rigorous and complex process in order to achieve its validity. So the question is, what should we remember therefore when we do research? Of course, number one, we learn from our speakers that clarity and veracity of information must highly be considered. Second is the rigorous process of the experimental research design must carefully observe at all times. And of course, there was also another reflection during the end of the session that says that research is not meant to be accomplished as a requirement, but therefore this research process is actually a need for knowledge generation and solution to the realities and challenges of the times. With that, I wish to thank Sir Engelbert Reyes and Sir Jonathan Madronero. Just a quick information about them. Sir Jonathan Madronero used to be my high school classmate, and now he is a very expert already in research and statistics. I'm very proud of him. And of course, Sir Engelbert also is part of our faculty in the College of Education, and right now he's already working in the research center as one of the heads of the university heads for research consultation and partnership with the rest of the different colleges and departments. So aside from that, so we failed to mention a while ago what will be the sort of the different topics that you will be looking forward for the next session. That will be our Learn at Home webinar series second edition, because that was the first edition from May to July. And then we will now be moving forward to our second edition. But this time, there's now a shift of the theme. So the theme now is maintaining a stress-free lifestyle while reinventing teaching and learning paradigms in the new normal. So the first topic was already introduced to us by Ma'am Jinkai, Ma'am Jacqueline Visitacion, that will be on July 10, 2020, still 7 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. And of course, the second session on preparing learning continuity plan. I'm sure that some of the teachers, some of our principals, and other experts in the elementary and secondary level in the basic education department still experience a lot of difficulty in redesigning their learning continuity plans. Of course, this session is really for you. And adapting traditional games to virtual classroom. We have invited a very wonderful speaker all the way from, she's a Filipino, but is now working in Vietnam as a teacher, as a virtual classroom teacher. And of course, the third session will be on July 24, 2020. It's 7 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. So we'll now discuss the making homeschooling and distance learning fun and innovative. Stay tuned with this because we have invited three Microsoft innovative experts, and at the same time, they are Metrobank Teacher Awardee, no? Metrobank Outstanding Teachers in the Philippines. So we have invited them. We're very lucky to have for them to have graced our occasion for that particular day on July 24. And the last session will be on a rhetorical move structure of result and discussion section of research article, which is also very timely, very important for those who are very interested about research, plus a special session on staying beautiful, fresh, and stress-free in the new normal. So that's also very important. While we are learning, we always should feel young, beautiful, fresh all the time. So that will be on July 31, 2020, still 7 p.m. Philippine Standard Time. For more information on how to register for free, visit USJ-R COE Hallway Facebook page and YouTube channel. Since this is our last session for the first edition of our Learn at Home webinar series, I would also like to express my sincerest thanks and congratulations to the head of this webinar session. We have Sir Ayonok Terogo, who is always consistently answering all your queries for certificates and for other sessions. And he is ready right there and then, ready to answer your questions, respond to anything that you will be asking to him 24/7. So that's Sir Ayonok Terogo. And of course, with our technical team headed by Mr. Wendell Casquejo, and the rest of the faculty members of the Department of Teacher Education, Department of Physical Education, and Department of Special Education. With that, I wish to thank you all and see you once again on July 10th. So we'll have a rest on the next Friday. So see you on July 10th for another Learn at Home webinar series, the learning that you can always manage with the comforts of your home. Thank you very much, and once again, good evening.
Thank you so much, Sir Babia. Okay, so before we end, as I said, there's an important announcement that I have to make. Okay, so for you to receive your e-certificate from tonight's session, make sure you visit our COE hallway page and click on the link posted and answer the questions asked there. And then remember, you must access this link right after our session because it will expire after an hour. Okay, so as promised, we will be giving you a certificate of completion for those who are able to attend all of our 8 webinar sessions in the first edition of our Learn at Home webinar series. So if you have completed all 8 sessions, kindly collate all e-certificates in a post on your personal Facebook account. Include in your post your insights or your learnings and put the hashtag and tag USJ-R COE hallway and place the hashtags COE Learn at Home web series and COE Excellence. And we will start checking your posts from June 27 up to July 1. So in cases which you were not able to receive your e-certificate, include in your post a proof of attendance on the day of the webinar. It may be a screenshot or a social media post that you have that session. And make sure you like our COE hallway page and also our YouTube channel. Okay. But for those who are not able to attend all the 8 sessions, don't fret because you still have a chance to receive a certificate of completion if you follow the steps that is posted in our COE hallway page. So for complete details about this, please visit our official page, the COE hallway page, or even leave a message for your or your queries because our very responsive chairman of the College of Education, the Department of Teacher Education, and the admin of our FB page, Mr. Ayonok Terogo, is always ready to answer all your queries. So friends, I'm sure that everybody was able to learn something new tonight. And that's a good thing about having or participating in webinars because we get to learn while we are at home. That means Being at home doesn't hinder us from acquiring new knowledge. That's why the University of San Jose Recoletos College of Education has initiated this webinar series to present engaging and relevant topics that are informative to our viewers. Okay, so once again, this is your facilitator tonight, Ms. Eda Nipange, a faculty member of the College of Education, saying thank you so much for always supporting our Learn at Home webinar series. See you all again on July 10 for another exciting topic. Good night and adelante.